This is going to be a pretty short one, and there's probably, I don't know, a million videos on how to change a toilet valve, but let's go for a million and one as usual. Um, so this is the situation here. Um, this valve is leaking, and it's so slight that my wife told me the toilet valve is leaking, and I said, "You're crazy. I don't ever hear it running." Is usually what happens is the flapper leaks, which just doesn't have a traditional flapper in it. It's got some kind of a different style. I'm not even sure. I've never worked on one of these before, but um, usually what happens is it leaks down into the toilet, and the valve float sinks down over a period of time as the water level goes down, and then it runs and it fills back up again. So I wasn't hearing that, so I said, "You're crazy. It's not leaking," until I got my ear all the way up against it, and I could hear it. And I've got a quarter turn ball valve on here, so I put my ear and I thought I heard something. I turned it off, and it got quiet, and I turned it on, and it was loud again. So my wife was right. So there's a lesson for you guys. Always listen to your wife. Well, maybe not always. Anyways, so I'm going to swap out this valve. I just got a Toto universal valve. There's apparently a lot of different types, but this one replaces most of them. And the picture looks like this one, so it'll probably work. And it says "Made in USA" on it. I love that. That's great. So we're going to pop this guy in here. So, changing a toilet valve is no great fancy art. You take your quarter turn, and if you don't have a quarter turn, you've got the multi-turn washer type valves. I'd replace that first of all. Those stink, and they make these now, and they don't leak. These have a Teflon seal in them or a nylon seal in them. It's a quarter turn. It shuts off absolutely. So I recommend putting one of these in if it so moves you. The other ones do work. They just don't work as well, and the rubber goes bad over time that's in their little rubber washer, and then it doesn't seal when you need it to, like when you need to turn it off. So anyways, this is what these look like, and they're all standard. Here is the hookup is down underneath here, and it's a real pain in the ass to see on this one. So I already turned off the water. I'm going to get it disconnected from underneath here. And then quite simply, this valve just lifts right out of here. You disconnect the tube right here. This is the this tube right here is what gives you the water that comes down around the bowl. That's how that works. So, as this is filling up the tank, this is giving you the water that flushes, kind of continuously puts water around all the little holes around the bowl. So I'm going to loosen this up and pull it out. And I'll show you once I get it out, because you're not going to be able to see it, what the little nut looks like that holds it on. But these are real easy to take apart. So here's a couple little tips on these two before you replace them. On this particular one, I can actually measure the top of this, and I can see this is about 1 3/4 or so. I'll take a closer look at it, but I can measure the top of this, and I can see what height the valve needs to be at. So when I do the new one, because the new one's adjustable, I'll be able to set it without having to guess. So here I was thinking that this was going to be easy. Before I started bragging about that, I should have taken a look at this. So this is a fully skirted toilet, and I did not install it, so I didn't know that this was a problem. But on these tanks, on this particular toilet, and this is a ST or a CST 416M, you have to take the tank off. So what they recommend doing is taking the line off here and taking the whole tank off. So you have to take the two nuts out of here. Of course, I have a blue tablet in this, which is just going to make this so much fun. So I've got to get that out of there. I'm going to suck the rest of the water out of here. But the tank has to come off of here. So I'm hoping that I can reuse the gasket in there, because I don't have a new one. And if I ruin it and I need to replace it, I'll just have to wait till I get parts. But so this is not going to be as easy as I thought it was. I've changed probably 50 or 100 valves before, and I've never run into this before. There's no way to access it under here. You can't. There's a little hole in the back, there's a little hole in the bottom, but there's no room to service it. You have to take the tank off. So I'm going to get this, get the two screws out of here, disconnect the line down there, and pull the tank up, and I'll show you what that looks like after it's off. Here's just a quick look without the tablet. in there. I fished it out, put it on a piece of plastic. I think I can salvage it. And then I ran water through it a couple of times just to get the rest of it out of there. It's probably not a common problem, but I didn't want to leave it in here because that stuff gets out. It just stains everything. So I flushed it pretty good. So now I'm going to take, there's 2 screws, or they're actually nuts with a flathead screw on them. So I'm going to take both of those out, and that should it should drop the bolts. I'll worry about that in a little bit. I think I can reach back there and feel them, but I'm going to loosen those up. And well, I still got to loosen up the line. I'll loosen up the line. I'll loosen those 2 up, and then I'm just going to lift this straight up and probably take it over to the bathtub. So we'll give that a shot. Tank's off. It's not the most impossible thing to do, but this design is really stupid. Just to hide, you can see what I mean now. See, there's a hole in the back. You can't really get to it between the wall, and then there's a little hole down on the bottom where the line comes through. There's just no way to service this thing. Definitely should probably replace the gasket, but I haven't got one, so it's going back together with this one. But it's still very pliable and everything. This toilet's only a couple of years old. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse that. Look, if it leaks, I should be able to get a hold of one, but I don't have one on hand, and it's Sunday. So going over here to where the tank is. See, now you can get to the nut right here. It's easy to get to service. So they tell you just to take the line off just like this. What a silly design, really. So there's there's the bolts. Now, obviously, they've turned them into studs here. So these are bolted underneath here. They're like carriage bolts, and it's got nuts on here. So that's kind of nice because it just gives you a stud to just plop it right down on there. But inside the tank, you'll have these guys. Here's the screws for them. Of course, they're covered in my blue toilet tablet, but I guarantee after 5 or 10 years, these probably vulcanized and probably turned to mush. They're still in really good shape, though, so I'm going to reuse them. I don't see any reason not to. They're still very soft. They're not. I'm not getting black coming off of them, so they're not rotted. So I plan to reuse those, but I don't advise it. Look, if you know that now that you know how this is supposed to come apart, I didn't because I don't do these Toto toilets, but it's an interesting design where you have to take the tank off to change the valve. I've never seen that before. So anyways, the rest of it's real easy. You know, we're just going to pop the line off, pop the nut off. We're going to change out the valve and put the tank back on. That's that part is real easy. If I didn't show you the valve before, here it is. We're going to just insert that guy in there and tighten it down. And so let me go ahead and get that swapped out, and then we'll be back with the assembly. And just a note on putting the new valve in. When you're putting the nut on there, it is very specific. It says this side up, and I don't know that you can see it. There it is, this side up. So they want the gasket to suck through the hole and go into this. It's got a radius on it. They want that gasket to suck into it. So it's going to kind of go on the way that you don't think. This side should be facing down. So this side will go up against the tank. Tank's back on. I set the height of this. It rotates clockwise. You kind of feel it lock when it locks into position. When it's turned this way, you can slide it up and down to set the height. So I went ahead and took my measurement with my tape measure, and I remembered that this was 1 3/4 inches, so I've got it set there. Now you can always adjust it once it's full. So if it's overfilling, when you'll hear it because it'll spill over before it's full, or if it's underfilling, if there's not enough flush water, you can adjust this up and down. It came with some clear tubing. I measured and cut a little piece to go to the refill, the bowl refill. So that's what this is. It's also since it's a universal one, it's got an adjustable valve on it. I'm just going to leave it wide open right now. If it's too much, I'll turn it down. I'm not going to put my tablet back in here until I know that it's working right. Obviously, I don't want to do anything until I know it's working right, because cleaning that out was a mess. So I got my water line hooked back up. So let's take a look and see what happens if there's any leaks. And it looks like the tank is filling. Don't see any water coming down the back. So that's good. we'll wait for this thing to fill back up. Looks like this valve leaks a little bit. Not that that matters, because it's just leaking back into the tank, but that's kind of silly. So let's see. All right, well, where it stopped, I hear it. It's not spilling back over into the tank, so that's good. I may need to adjust this up further. It looks to me like the water line's a little bit low. So I can see where it was right here. It's about a ½ an inch low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this. I might even be able to do it here. If I rotate this loose and move it up just a little bit. It's probably stupid doing this with the water being in here. There we go. There, it just moved up. That's probably too high now. And you know what? I'll give you a little clue here. I went too high. And turn the water off. Something I just noticed, the pressure from the water is actually forcing this up. So I don't want to do that with the water on. You want it to be off. It looks like my hose just self-disconnected. So let's set it there. Reconnect this hose. All right, now let's see what happens now. I can see where the water line was. All right, well, it's off in that position. That actually is probably high enough. So let's flush it and see what happens. And actually, you don't need to flush it all the way, just enough to get the valve to turn on, to get past the hysteresis. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But that's where the valve would turn on. There's a dead band in there. That's what that's called, is hysteresis. And so we're going to let it fill back up. Let's see where she shuts off. Yeah, so it's spilling over a little bit. So I might need to lower it down just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and turn that off a little bit. I'll bleed some water out. I'm going to turn it. And I'm going to adjust it down. Well, I went way too far now because this is kind of hard to do. Let's see if that gets us to where we want to be right there. Let enough water out to let it just a little bit. Just kind of press this a little bit to let it out. I guess that's pretty good. I noticed it does have a WL on there. I assume that's water line right there. So that's probably pretty good. Let's see where it is versus where I started. Yeah, it's about the same. That's about 1 5/8 inches instead of 1 3/4 inches. So I don't know. I guess that water line I'm looking at, I don't know if it was that high before or not. But anyways, you get the idea. So that's how you adjust the float. And that pretty much does it. So not the easiest valve to change. It's a pain having to take this tank off here. And I think what you can do after I got to looking at this one, there's probably plumber watches this, they're probably going to laugh at me because I think looking at this valve, you can just change the top half. I can see it pops off right there. So I probably could have just gotten the top half of this. The new valve doesn't have this, so it's probably a different model. If I'd have done a little bit more research, I would have known that you could probably just change this. So learn from my mistakes. I always say that, and I mean it. So anyways, that's swapping out a toilet valve. This is an Aquia, I think I want to say Aquia 2. Probably saying that wrong, but it's I'll put it down in the description, the video description, what model of Toto toilet this is. So that's replacement of the valve.